This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pimm Fox. U.S. companies have stockpiled almost $2 trillion in cash. Yes, $2 trillion in cash. That's up 26% from a year ago, and many of them don't seem to have any immediate plan to spend it. What is the effect on the economic recovery? Let's find out more from Roben Farzad, reporter for Bloomberg Businessweek. His story on the topic is going to be in this magazine's next issue. Roben Farzad, good to have you with us, as
Great,
always.
Tim. Thanks for having me.
What's this whole idea? Almost $2 trillion on corporate balance sheets sitting around in cash. What are they going to do with it?
It's the financial cliche of our times. Cash stockpiling on balance sheets. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? We could have had the same conversation at the beginning of '08, the beginning of '09. The stockpiles just keep getting ever larger. And the point that we kind of look at this week is what happens when these differing priorities kind of converge. The way hedge funds are now stockpiling cash, individual investors are stockpiling cash, and companies now have something, like you said, close to $2 trillion. Something has to give.
So is this good for the economy? I mean, if they're not spending it by hiring workers or building factories or producing new products, what happens to all that economic activity?
From the perspective of the shareholder, especially in a time when 10-year treasuries, as you've reported, are below 3% at this point, you're desperate for companies to give you some sort of cash back, some head start, some rebate. We've had cash for clunkers. We've had a first-time home buyer credit.
Cash for shareholders,
Cash
Roben.
for shareholders would be great, because certainly we know that there is a wealth effect. There's a substantial wealth effect when people feel flusher from their 401ks, their brokerage statements, and yet the conundrum remains. J&J, Merck, all these huge companies, Walmart, McDonald's pay substantial dividends right now, and yet no one seems to care because maybe the market has lost faith in dividends.
So what do the companies do? They use some of the money to buy back shares? Is that a way to return money to shareholders?
They are doing buybacks, but frustratingly, buybacks have somewhat been discredited. If you remember all these activists, Carl Icahn and Bill Ackman and people kind of affixing themselves to the ankles of companies and management in '06 and '07, those buybacks were done at exorbitant prices, it turns out. The buyback is not as efficacious a tool as many a shareholder activist has made it to be. So right now, the prevailing thought is just give me my money back. Just pay me. You as a CEO don't necessarily have a better road plan or blueprint for spending that money. At this point, let's just call it a day and give me the cash back.
So do we get activist shareholders coming in and saying, all right, give me the money?
If these hedge funds can stay afloat and if they can get above their bogies again, if they can summon the
Explain what that means. In other words, they've got to reach a certain high watermark in order to get paid.
Exactly. If you're not over your break-even point, and a lot of them are still reeling from '08 and '09, you're not collecting the 20%, the 2 and 20% of the upside. So what's your motivation? What's your incentive to go out there and stage a proxy battle and spend and focus on this one position in order to move the needle? Well, if there's a continued die-out of hedge funds, if returns remain piddling, there's going to be a significant motivation.
And so what happens next? I mean, do the companies turn a deaf ear to their shareholders?
They can't. It's hard to do. It's an embarrassment of riches. Darden, for example, the owner of Olive Garden and Red Lobster.
The restaurant company, yes.
It's literally just in a recent call had to answer to a lot of people, how could you quadruple your cash balance in a year? What the heck are you going to do with it? You're not paying off all this debt. It's not like you're opening up tons of restaurants. Management doesn't have any other excuse. What am I going to buy, a motion picture company? No. At this point, there are no more options. Cash is yielding nothing, and you're seeing the stars align for kind of another shareholder revolt of sorts.
Is it possible because of dividend changes in the tax code that we're going to see special dividends?
Special dividends, right, because the special taxation of dividends is something that's going to sunset soon enough. And again, we were told a few years ago that if you give preferential taxation of dividends, companies are going to issue them, and there's going to be a renaissance in income investing. It just didn't happen. But I just don't believe that you're going to have cash balances to the tune of, individual investors, households are sitting on something $7-8 trillion. And that money is restive. It's going to be coiled up like a tight spring, and it's going to go somewhere.